basically is to review.
Sorry about that.
Just to review proposed bylaws submitted by the town manager or town departments and edit them and place them into the bylaws in appropriate position. However, for Stretch Energy, we would be operating similar to the budget subcommittee, which reviews the annual budget on behalf of the council and a recommendation to the whole council. It hardly needs to be said that if our council recommends adoption, the council will almost certainly approve it without much further discussion. The committee should also bear in mind that our town manager has already indicated informally to the state that East Long Meadow desires to become a green community. The council has also tasked us with reviewing the adoption language and drafting a bylaw for including Stretch Energy into our bylaws and our code. We're doing this in advance of whether we know whether Stretch Energy will even be approved, which is kind of the cart before the horse, but that's what we're also doing today. Since we have Mark Rubinski from the Mass Department of Energy Resources here today, along with Mass Department's recommendation of wording to be used to adopt, I will begin with that topic if that's okay with the rest of the committee. And sure. Is Mark present, Don, or has he given up?
No, he's present. He's on his way in.
Is everyone ready to hear from Mark?
Yes.
Yep. Is this an overview again, or?
Mark is muted. I will ask. Mark is muted. Great. Welcome, Mark.
Hi. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Worth the wait.
I believe you heard the introduction.
I did.
Yep. Right? And so the purpose that we're going to talk about right now is not the recommendation to adopt, but the material that you sent us that shows how we would adopt, and I certainly have questions about that material as well.
Okay. So, could you also, Gene, could you also let Will?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was with you, but yep.
Thanks. And will be able to answer any questions about stretch code directly too, but I can go over the adoption process.
Well, do we want to, is there a reason to go over the adoption? I mean, we've seen the adoption from another town, and we've read, I hope, the adoption documents. So rather than go through them, we might just start with questions and see whether we have a proper understanding.
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
Pat, point of clarification. I'm not sure which document you're talking about with the adoption process. I did get something late this morning from Jeannie as an addition to our meeting, and I was out of my office until like a half hour ago, so I haven't had a chance to print it or read it.
Okay, then let's let Mark dialogue through.
Mark, excuse me, just 1 second. Or Will, if you can hear me, could you turn on your video if you have it?
My laptop is doing my desk. I have a small desk, so I don't have my.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Just it's my job to ask.
Sure.
Okay.
So the process for adoption, since East Long Meadow is you don't have town meeting anymore, correct? You have a city form of government, so a city council. So they would adopt it via general ordinance.
So Pat?
Yes, Ralph, you have a question?
I do. So Mark, what you're looking at is we're going to adopt, what is it, CMR 115 AAA or something like that, which is the stretch code language within the building code, correct?
Yes. So it's added to your general bylaw, like it's your general. It would be adopted as a general bylaw, and then the purpose is to add that as the section of your energy, your base energy code, or your energy code. Sorry.
Anyone else? Okay, I need some clarification myself, so I will jump in and say, it appears to me that the stretch energy code itself allows some variation whether the town adopts it for new residences or existing construction or reconstruction. Is that the case, Mark?
It's only for new construction.
It's only for new construction.
Yes.
Is there a choice as to whether it's new construction residential or commercial, or does it need to be both?
You would adopt the stretch energy code as it is, and the stretch energy code applies to all new residential building and commercial buildings that are, and Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's over 40,000 square feet, and then any new commercial that is any high energy user like a supermarket or refrigerated storage or anything like that. I think that's what the code says.
Okay, I don't see those restrictions in the bylaw adoption, perhaps because they're coded in the law. Is that right, Mark?
That's correct. Yep.
And there's no limitation on residential. It's not residential above a certain, like 3,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet, or
it's all new residential.
All residential.
That's so, Pat, you're getting at that's what that document that we got says. It says residential construction over 3,000 square feet.
Right.
So which document is that?
Mass Department of Energy Resources stretch code adoption process.
Yeah. So let me go over that because that is a point of confusion. So when the green communities, like when 25A was created, the act to create the green communities program, the legislation actually said that a municipality must require all new construction over 3,000 square feet and all new commercial and industrial to be energy efficient. So to focus on energy efficiency in new buildings. So the only way to meet that, though, is to adopt the stretch energy code. Now, the stretch energy code applies to all new buildings. So there's no way to just focus on. There's no way in building code to just focus on buildings over 3,000 square feet. So the only way that a municipality or community can meet that portion of the Green Communities Act is to adopt the stretch code, which applies to all of those buildings.
Okay. Tom, I see you had a question. Tom O'Connor?
I do. I had a question. You keep referring to the fact that it's a portion of it, and the onus is on us to make sure the work is done according to that, or is this a state oversee?
It's your building inspector.
Okay.
It's the building inspector's requirement to enforce the stretch energy code. So it's enforceable by the inspector.
So the second part of my question is, so what you're saying is that we have to make sure it's implemented correctly, enforce it as well, and what's the potential penalties to our builders?
Will, can you, I'm not sure if can you speak to that at all?
Will is muted.
Sure, no, I'm back, yep.
Okay. All right.
So there is no, I guess there would be, perhaps there's no penalty. The discussion would be between the building inspector and the builder. Typically what happens when they hire a home energy rater is that they work with the builder to ensure it does not fail. There's retesting options available. You know, there's multiple avenues to ensure that the building passes.
Follow up, Tom?
Yeah, part of what I have found out in talking to a number of developers is that they're already doing it today because it makes sense. So why are we being asked to implement a new rule, regulation, or law for our town if they already think that it's a good idea and they're doing it without having to worry about what they didn't do and be penalized for it?
So the reason that you're being asked to do it is because East Long Meadow is interested in becoming a green community. And its criteria number 5 for becoming a green community is adopting the stretch energy code. So the fact that you're already doing it is even better. It seems like it's less of a heavy lift, per se, for the town to implement the stretch energy code.
Anyone else? Tom Christensen.
Speaking of a heavier lift, what does this do to the building commissioner's office? Does this change their work, or is there more that they need to do on a daily basis for each building?
Will can speak to that. I'd recommend talking with your building inspector about this too. They're likely familiar with stretch code, and then also some neighboring building inspectors as well. But I think Will can speak to this.
Sure. Yeah. So from the discussions we've had with close to 300 now different communities, many building officials actually do like this avenue because it requires, again, the help of the home energy rater, and they submit through the application process home energy rating certificate, which is what they receive and verify that everything has been complete.
Okay.
I will add, for the benefit of everyone, that I did try to communicate with Mary to see if she could send us somebody from the planning board or the building inspector, but she was unable to on very short notice. However, Kevin Duquette did send a short email in which he states, and I just got this, so I can't send it around everyone, but here it is. His position is current Mass State Building Codes under 780 CMR, when compared to the Stretch Energy Code requirements, are almost the same in comparison and have no real change effects on building code requirements. For the most part, contractors and homeowners already follow stretch code requirements to pursue certain energy rebates and energy efficient grants and programs. So he is, and he goes on to say, we really shouldn't be concentrating on this because it's a no-brainer. We should be looking at criteria 1 to 4, which are not in our purview right now. But that's what Kevin has to say. Ralph, did you have a question?
I do. I'm going to direct it to Will. So if I understand correctly, it's a combination of energy efficiency. So it doesn't mandate, let's say, that your windows be a certain amount. It just says as a whole, the building has to be this tight and this energy efficient. And then it's up to the contractor to pick and choose whatever combination he needs to make it that way, if that's correct.
Ralph, yes, that's correct.
Pat, it looks like you have a question.
Well, I see some things in there that do ask for certain requirements in order to minimize water usage. And so I suspect that there are some things in there, Ralph, that we're not aware of, but apparently there are not many, or Will would have raised them. Anyone else? Because I do have a position as well. Bill, you've been quiet.
No, I'm just taking it all in. I'm good with everything that's being said. I mean, I understand. I did a little bit of research on it. I did find, to Kevin's point, that the building codes are almost lined up now and things are happening. So to me, it's a no-brainer.
One of the things that our council rules require is that there be someone to present the information from the administrative side, and together with a list of pros and cons. Of course, we have all the pros in the world from Mark's fine information that he sent us over the last few months, and but we have Kevin's informal message here saying, yeah, it's cool, but we really have not met either one of those requirements. So I would, just for the purpose of discussion, I would say, to point out the potential cons, from my perspective, is number one, it's not really necessary to mandate it. Most construction is already implementing it, so it's not vitally necessary. Second, once it's adopted, you must agree to any changes that are made in it without any recourse to rejecting those changes, short of rescinding your approval of the entire document. There is no grant money for this step, so there's really no financial incentive. It does add expense to the construction that's not actually mandated by the bylaw. And so those are just the ones that jump out at me, which don't mean here and there, but those are the only things I could find, and no one gave us any other reasons to feel it's not appropriate. I would point out that the last time this was raised, it was rejected by the selectmen. Anyone else comment? Yes, Ralph?
So, Pat, the last time it was raised was early in the process of the stretch code. And one of the main concerns I had, one of the negatives, was the builders felt as though there was two separate guidelines. There was the stretch code for building and then the regular code. And what their concern was is going from town to town that they would have to be building houses differently depending on what town they were in, and they didn't like that. Since that time, actually over the last 2 weeks, I've talked to all the same builders that had negative stuff to say back then. And they said that they found that most of their clientele, when they were building the new house, wanted all the energy savings they could get. So the houses that they're building now are already to the stretch code because they're doing everything they can to make the houses energy efficient. And all the builders I talked to said they didn't have any issue with it anymore. So although it was a problem 5-6 years ago when we first looked at it, I think most of that's alleviated now.
Thank you, Ralph. My fault. We really did get off topic a little bit because we're supposed to be looking at the actual adoption papers. So let's go back to that. The adoption that you sent around, Ralph, from Charlton, I believe it was, and the adoption papers that Mark has given us are almost exactly the same.
Yep.
And so I assume that a quick reading of them would say we could adopt those into our bylaws as well. I'll entertain anybody's feeling on that issue.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom.
Pat, I had just another observation with regards to cons. There were, I don't recall the exact number, but something in the area of 285 communities adopted this. My question would be, what happened to the other 75 and why did they not adopt it?
We're one of them.
Right. So where did they see that's problematic?
I would like to ask you to hold that question off because we really, my fault, we got off topic in discussing whether to adopt or not, when really the first topic we were trying to discuss while we have Mark with us is the actual adoption paperwork, the adoption legalese itself. So
yeah, again, through the chair, Pat,
yes.
As you know, I'm a real stickler. We're getting information at the last minute and being asked to read it, absorb it without being able to research it, and getting something late this morning coming to a 2 o'clock meeting, in my opinion, is not a way to go about doing business. So I did not have that paper, nor did I print it out. I do have Ralph's stretch energy code from the town of Charlton, which I think is, I'm reading through it and I understand it, but I'm not ready to act on any of those in the stretch energy code proposals because I don't know what they are.
Well, Ralph's proposal and the proposal from Mark are pretty much the same. But Ralph, you had an observation?
That's what I was going to say. I was surprised this morning when I received that through Mark, because I looked at it, I'm like, oh, obviously Charlton took his advice and copied it and put it in word for word pretty much. I think with E-code, that's pretty much what we're looking at going forwards is the definition, a purpose. I mean, that's really the way we set everything up in E-code, which I thought this was fantastic that it's pretty much already done for us. We insert the town's name into it, and I think it covers everything.
Yeah.
So
I had the same observation as Ralph when I read them and looked at them side by side, saying that it's basically the same document.
Yeah. Through the chair.
Tom
I did have a couple of actually one big observation. When Mark started out, he said new construction. was mentioned several times. In Charlton, it says and existing buildings. So in the language in Charlton, and existing buildings, is not something that we just talked about. It's new construction.
Mark, can you answer that?
Will, are you able to speak to that, how it says that in the code, in the actual code itself, where it says and existing buildings? I think it has something to do with how it's referenced.
It is. It's basically a reference back to the building code. So because the IBC and the IRC, the way they're written with the mass amendments and everything else, it's basically in there. And if you were to look at like the IBC, it also says when there's this scenario in case existing homes, you would refer to this section of the code. So again, when it's the stretch code piece and all of the ratings and all that, it only applies to new construction.
What about commercial?
New construction as well. New construction for commercial.
New construction as well.
The reason that the code, you're going to see it similar on all green communities across the state, how they adopt the stretch energy codes. This has been vetted. It's already been used by all of these communities. It's been vetted by the Attorney General. We recommend that you don't make any changes whatsoever before you adopt the code as it's written.
So how can you explain the question that Tom Christensen raised about the limitations of the size of the building to which it would apply? Reassure us where we find that. How
it applies to all of them and not just buildings over 3,000 square feet.
Right.
That would be within the code itself. So when you're adopting this, you're not just adopting it for buildings over 3,000 square feet. We've had discussions internally that we know that's confusing, but that's the way the legislation was made. If you look at 25A, Section 10, where the Green Communities division was made, you'll see that in there. But with stretch code applies to all new construction, no matter the size of the building. So that's, and stretch code is the only way for a community to meet criteria 5 of green communities. So it's a little bit, this refers to that, now it refers back to this, but we only have one way to meet criteria 5, and that's stretch code, which applies to all buildings, or all new construction buildings.
Yes, Tom Christensen?
Yeah, so just to Mark's point, that is actually, that 3,000 square foot thing is in that adoption process. It's not actually in the code. So if you're looking for an assurance, it's not in, that number is not in the code.
Right.
It's not in the building code.
That implies that we have an option to limit it to buildings of over 3,000 somehow.
No, because the only code that's available for you to adopt that's been vetted through, Will once again step in if I'm overstepping my bounds, that's been vetted through the BBRS, is the stretch code. So that's the only, unless you wanted to make your own code, which other communities have tried and failed, that would be the only other option to develop your own code, which I highly recommend against.
Okay, Ralph, would you be willing to create the document built based on the Charlton code and the code that Mark's given us for submission to the council after we review it?
Sure, that would be no problem. Like I said, I'll create it based on that with our town inserted in, and that way there I can send it out to you and it can go around to everyone.
Okay, then in that case, I would entertain a motion so that we can move and get this behind us. I would entertain a motion to have Ralph create the document based on this.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so Tom is making the motion that Ralph be asked to create a document based on these Charlton and the state formats and present it to us.
Yeah, I'll second for discussion.
Okay, discussion.
Discussion is, we're going back to the Charlton where it says, and I haven't seen that other document, so I have no way of comparing the two, but Mark keeps saying that we can't, he doesn't recommend making changes, but it sounds like Charlton did. they have both new construction and existing buildings. So we keep circling back to this issue of the code has changed in their language that they've adopted.
And I think it's been clarified in this meeting that it's new construction only, right, Ralph?
Yeah, so the stretch code, from what I understand, applies only to the new buildings, the new construction. But this general bylaw, what it's basically saying is the purpose of the general bylaw is an energy efficiency purpose.
Yep.
And the whole idea is to make your buildings more energy efficient where you can. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by adopting the stretch energy code.
So through the chair, we can still modify that language and take out "and existing buildings" because that's troublesome to me.
Well, that's Charlton's. We don't have to copy Charlton. We can use
That's
the one
correct.
that Mark gave.
Again, I haven't seen the one that went around, Tom. At the
Sorry,
last minute,
Tom.
I didn't get
But
it.
I do want to apologize for only sending that document to Jeannie last night. It slipped my mind. I was like, oh, this would be obviously useful for everybody to have before the meeting, but it obviously wasn't enough time before the meeting.
Well, there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? We do get another crack at it when Ralph sends it around.
And I would recommend not adopting Charlton's the way that is and sticking with the document that I sent out yesterday.
I think I hear that, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah.
So are we ready to vote? Bill?
Yes.
Tom Christensen?
Yes.
Tom O'Connor?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And we appreciate your willingness to do that, Ralph.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Ralph.
Now we can go back to the issue of the recommendation that the council seems to be asking us to make the decision as to whether to adopt the code in the first place. Like I said, we did the cart before the horse here, but so Tom O'Connor, you had a question, a further follow-up question in that area.
It was just on the language of which one we're going to adopt. I want to make sure that it doesn't affect existing buildings, and only new construction. So we don't have to go back and retrofit any of our current buildings and ask the owners of these properties to spend that kind of money.
Okay, the topic before us now then is to determine whether or not this committee as a whole makes a recommendation to the council to adopt or not to adopt the stretch energy code at this time. And it is restricted just to the stretch energy code itself and not the other 4 items as part of green communities. So I'll entertain discussion on that. Yes, Ralph.
So I'll jump in. Based on the fact that 289 of the 351 communities have already adopted it, and that all of the builders that I've talked to are already implementing it, I see no reason for our town not to adopt it.
Okay, thank you. Tom Christensen.
And I'll add, it seems our building commissioner is okay with it as well. So
I believe that's true from what I hear.
I was going to echo that point about the building commissioner being in favor of this. Tom O'Connor?
No, I'm fine. If Kevin Duquette thinks this is something that's good and manageable, and he can oversee this process, fine.
And I am dropping back to my cons, including the fact that it is really not necessary, in my opinion, that they're already doing it, that there's really no big advantage to us. It adds expense to construction that is now going to be mandated, and we can't make any changes to it without dropping the whole thing. So I will be a nay. Any other discussion?
I'm confused, Pat. I thought we were voting on just recommending it to go to Ralph to create the bylaw and come back with a recommendation to the council.
No, Tom, we actually terminated that discussion and voted unanimously to send it to Ralph to create. Right. So what we're discussing now is, again, cart before the horse. The council wants a recommendation whether to adopt it, whether we like Ralph's wording or not. Does the town, are we recommending to the town council that the town council adopt on behalf of East Long Meadow the stretch energy code? They have asked for our recommendation. I know it's not part of our normal process.
Right. Yeah, no, I would like to change my vote.
Is that clear? Well, we haven't voted yet.
Ah, okay.
But you can further discuss if you'd like.
No, I just feel that this is putting not so much the cart before the horse, but it's adding undue expenses to the builders and to the cost of new construction. And if the builders are already doing it because there's a market for it, that's great. Let the market demand. The builders feel that they need to put this in to sell the homes, great. But they don't want to do it. I mean, I agree. I don't want to put restrictions in place just for the sake of having restrictions. If it makes business sense, let the businesses decide.
Tom Christensen.
So I guess the other point of it is in order to become a green community, this is something that is a requirement. And what are we missing out on if we don't adopt the stretch energy code and adopt the rest of it, right? So yeah, we sort of already said, a lot of people have said that they've spoken to builders and they're already doing it. So we're not really putting anything on them other than the fact that it's now required. But this is sort of something everyone wants, and the town is going to receive benefit from adopting this, right?
I'm not sure there's a benefit to the town in adopting it.
If I could speak to that.
Mark, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid this discussion is amongst us at this point. We've received the documentation you've sent. We've received the marketing materials. We certainly understand the pros, and speaking of pros, the pros have indicated their approval of this. But at this point, we need to discuss this within our confines. Ralph, do you have something?
So I guess my comment is, if the builders are already doing it, the codes are almost identical. There's not very much difference between the regular building code now and the stretch code, as what we've heard from Kevin Duquette. I just don't see the drawback and the reason not to do it. I mean, once almost all the communities have done it, it's all of a sudden, it's not going to be a quote unquote stretch energy code. It's just going to be the building code. Like I said, 2/3 of the communities have already adopted it as their building code. So, I mean, the builder's not going to come to East Long Meadow and say, oh, hey, we don't have to build energy efficient in this town, but we have to in the other 300 towns. They're going to build their buildings the same way they have to in 99% of the communities. And so going forwards, it just seems to make sense. And to Tom Christensen's point, if down the road we choose to become a green community, this is a step towards it.
And I would say that being step 5, this is probably an appropriate step 5. If we want to become a green community, you would adopt all 5 steps. However, I'm ready for a motion so that we can actually vote. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt, or to recommend, to the council to adopt the stretch energy.
I'd like to make a motion that this subcommittee recommend to the full council the adoption of the stretch energy code.
Thank you, Ralph. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Is there any further discussion?
Well, if I can, Pat, I have to say it because it's still nagging at me. Part of our process and our discussion for many years now has been, when we receive information, we receive it in a timely manner, and we receive it with pros and cons from the knowledge and content experts, not us trying to figure it out. We're being asked to make a decision based on information that is incomplete. And I, for one, don't like that. I think The content knowledge experts, when they come before the council, we've always required that they be there for a presentation to answer questions with a list of pros and cons, and not a bogus list. I'm not to say that someone would do that, but I want a true list of pros and cons from the content knowledge experts before I vote on anything.
Tom, I understand and I agree. And I would have to say, however, that in this case, that should have been presented to the council at the council's meeting. And that did not happen. The council voted to send it to us for a recommendation. I feel that we have had enough discussion. We have discussed we have surfaced a number of cons, and we're in the position where we need to make the recommendation, albeit I agree with you that it was not handled in the best way possible. Any further? I'm ready to take a vote then. This is a vote to adopt, to recommend to the town council the adoption of the Stretch Energy Code. I'll start with you, Tom Christensen.
Yes.
Tom O'Connor.
No.
Ralph.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
And I'm a no. So it passes 3-2. The council will be informed of our recommendation and the vote. And one more item before we leave, and that is that the recommendation's been made by Mark and others that we choose a date to implement it so it doesn't randomly occur. So that there's plenty of notice to the business community as to when it's going to be. It being July now, it probably should, or August, it probably should be January 1st. Their recommendation was either January or. Okay. So thank you, Mark, and thank you, Will. And we'll see what the council decides. I assume they will adopt it. Would be my my feeling.
I appreciate all your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mark. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Will.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Okay, any further discussion on this topic before we go off? Jeannie, do you think you've captured everything? Okay.
Do we need how about the location of the, is that something we can discuss when Ralph sends in the draft?
Ralph?
Yeah, actually, we can discuss it. I was just going to pull up E-code and look through. I mean, my initial thought was this has to do with the building inspector, so let's look for it somewhere in that location. But I thought I would check a couple other towns first and see where theirs fit in. But yeah, if you have a recommendation or you've already looked it up and you want to let me know, I have a pen in hand.
I have not. I noticed the template that Mark had, had obviously the chapter missing.
Yeah.
So whatever, we can discuss that later.
I would also point out that we really need to recommend adoption in both the old code and the new code, since the new code has not yet been adopted.
Yes, I realize that.
It's probably most important to the old code because that's what the town council is going to have to adopt.
Thank you, Pat.
Well, it's easier, Ralph. It's a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Dig through the old bylaws to try and find a location for it.
Oh, pick one, they can change it. when we go to general code.
Yep.
Hey, how's everybody for time? We have till 4?
I'm going to be bugging out about 3:30.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think 3:30. I got to hit it too.
Well, there are some questions I have on the general code issues that I'd like to perhaps look at and ask the council or the subcommittee's opinion. The general code has given us adoption paperwork and 44 pages of appendix, which basically is the red line that they're recommending we use as a result of the requirements of our bylaw to provide a red line, that the town council will actually be acting on nothing that we've sent them, but on this red line. So would it make sense for us to take this red line, divide it into 4 or 5 and share it around to have people look at Jeannie's 3-page document that we sent saying, here are the final changes that we made. Make sure they're in this 44 pages and anything else that you find in the 10 pages, or is that a step that's really not necessary? That we can assume, based on what we've seen from General Code, that they've basically created a document based on the stuff we've sent in. And if we discover an error somewhere along the line later, we can fix it. I'll throw that to discussion. Yes, Jeannie.
So I took that 3-page table of our changes and I checked it against the paginated version.
Yep.
And the E-Code Online version, and everything was there except the stormwater issue. And I sort of sent that to Ralph to look over because it confused me.
Always the stormwater.
Because we had so many changes and they had a change and there was redundancies. So I was in the dark about that a little bit, but I did.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Check those against the online version and the paginated version.
And well, Jeannie, I agree with you. I was flipping back and forth going, okay, where are we with this?
Yeah.
Because my notes weren't great as far as what we had agreed on and what we hadn't, because the stormwater went back and forth a couple times.
And we did contradict ourselves from one review to the other. So Claudia took it upon herself to figure out the best place where she thought it went. And I sent that, did I just send that to you, Ralph, to look over? I said, if you had time. I don't know if I sent it to everybody, but she's probably right in her assumption, but I just don't have the expertise nor the memory to know if that's correct.
If you could forward that to everyone again.
Okay.
And let us retake a look at it as a group, that would be great.
Okay.
Because Tom will probably know better off than anyone because he deals with stormwater.
We haven't had any this month, so
a
little rough.
Last month.
Yeah, how about last month? Right.
Yeah, we're all set for this month so far.
Tom O'Connor, did I see your hand raised?
Yeah, I just had an observation. When I looked and when I got to the miscellaneous documents, I started going through it. And the first heading item was departments. And very glaringly found that the police department and fire department are not listed. And since I missed the last meeting, I wasn't sure why.
I don't know where you are. What document is that? That would be a big deal.
It's within the document under miscellaneous documents, under the E-Code, under miscellaneous documents. It says department heads. It says departments, and it's listed in there, and they're all listed except for the police department and fire department.
I think because they were already listed in the original code, Tom. Does that make sense? That the miscellaneous doc is the, hold on a sec.
There's several miscellaneous documents.
It's the one it's the last item on the list on the index.
And unfortunately, I don't have my computer with me, so I can't see it. I can't find it myself. It's still up on my PC at home. Jeannie, do you know what Tom is referring to? Can you?
I'm looking at miscellaneous documents, and there's
he says it's the last one.
Categories. The last categories are working documents.
No. If you look and opened it up, it's the first item says departments, town departments. I believe it was titled.
Oh, that's in the second category, attachment A.
Yes.
Okay, so that was back a year ago. That was part of our, when we submitted the workbook, those were the attachments that we'd put together, but that was almost, well, a year and a half ago when we first submitted. So this doesn't mean this is part of the final. It was part of our working papers.
So that's not a current document then. It's a working paper document from prior.
Yes.
You're saying.
Okay.
Yes.
Those were departments that didn't actually exist under the general bylaws, and we had them add them, the assessors, the accounting, stuff like that.
Right, and we added
the police and the fire were already in under general bylaws. That's why they weren't there.
Okay.
I mean, what I did is I actually went into the E-code document and started going through that page by page to see how that compared and all. And obviously stuff's in all different locations, but it appeared as though, to me anyways, they had covered everything. Anything that popped into my mind, I literally put a search in and boom, just like that, it came up all the different locations.
And those lie now under emergency services. If you look in the final draft.
Yes.
Police department, fire department, and then the subsections for those departments. And we put those first because we thought those were the most important departments that people would want to refer to.
Yes. Okay.
So let me go back to my original question. We've been through this document now 3 times in detail. Is it worthwhile, or is the risk de minimis for us to have to go through the 44-page document and compare it to something that we've sent out? Or can we avoid that step and assume that is correct? How do people feel? Because otherwise I'm going to divide it. Everybody's going to get 10 pages.
Jeannie, I know Jeannie said I'm half to 3/4 of the way through, and I haven't found anything yet either. So
that's reassuring, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah.
The stuff that I looked at, I couldn't find anything either.
I wouldn't expect we would. So I'm perfectly happy with that myself.
I'm going to finish too.
There's some question in my mind as to whether General Code knows all of the changes that we have made, all of the new bylaws, that have been passed in the last 2 years, and whether or not they are included in this document yet. And if not, which ones are not? Jeannie, you've done some work on that.
Yes, and I say we're probably we're good until, right through the kennel licensing.
So
I actually sent that to them before the second reading took place because that was the no-brainer. So that's in there actually with the new kennel license fees under the town clerk's fees. Ralph, that's there.
Then there's really nothing. What about the charter?
The charter, I don't know if it's here yet. I sent it to her. She said she's going to put that in. Let me see if it's in here.
Well, the best part with
not in there yet. But
the best part with the charter is it's just a PDF that they just replace.
And I sent that to her.
Yep.
So were the changes that we voted on?
No, I'm talking about the changes we voted on, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
I sent that to her, but it was just prior to her sending me the final, so it's not going to be in the final draft, but it will be. I don't know if she'll make any other changes. I think she will make incidental changes and then resend it to us. And I'll have to look at the latest correspondence I have with her on that.
Well, does that mean we're going to get another 600-page document to look at, or are you still just referring to the charter document itself?
Just the charter document itself.
Well, we're not sending her the charter document to do any work on, right?
No, it's just the PDF, which is uneditable.
We're making the changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Here. We're sending it to her,
right?
Include as a PDF. Otherwise, she's going to charge us.
No, I don't think she's going to charge us for this. And I can't say 100%, but I can say 99%.
I think she knew that there was something going on with the charter, and a charter commission was working and everything. So I don't think it's
because that one goes hand in hand with the approval of the E-code.
Right.
So I was keeping her abreast of that all along.
Yeah.
Well, Jeannie, I want you to be sure to stay on top of that, because it's my understanding that they have washed their hands of the charter document and are going to make it, and are going to be prepared to receive it only as a PDF that they will insert.
Right.
We will make the changes. So
right.
That's the way I understand it. If you think she's making changes, then you're going to have to look at it closely.
No, and when you go into the E-code, it's literally a PDF attachment that it's a link that you click onto.
So let me, to clarify, you have made the changes internally here and posted them on our website, and you're sending her the PDF to just add.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Everything's been printed. You all should have a copy of the hard copy. So that's a done deal.
Okay. Okay, how about has anyone looked at the adoption language itself? We could spend a lot of time on that, or we could simply say, since it's only 4 pages, we could just simply send it to Jesse because he's going to look at it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed, Pat.
Yeah, just send it to him.
Yeah.
I already did. I have received, I received permission from Mary to go to him, because we have to do that. And I sent it to him, and he just left on vacation until next Wednesday. So
oh no, that's terrible.
So if it's urgent, he said he'd look at it now. And I said it wasn't urgent. When he comes back, if he'd take a look at it, that'd be great.
No, urgent doubles the price.
That's fine. That's fine.
That's good.
I sent Claudia the charter, the new charter document on July 20th.
Cool.
Right.
Thank you.
So.
Okay. The last question I have is, so we're not going to look at the adoption language. We'll leave that up to him, and then we'll look at it when he sends it back to us.
Yep.
And we do not, Jeannie, we do not want him to look at the 44 pages, however. Right?
No, I just gave him the sample language that Claudia sent us.
Okay, but okay, the sample language that she sent us, I think, had the 44 pages attached as a part of that document. I want to be sure that we don't get charged for him reviewing 44 pages of red line.
Yeah, we don't need that.
I sent him 3 pages of sample adoption language.
Yeah, that's what it's 3 pages.
All right.
There's the 44 pages are not attached to it.
Right.
Good.
Good. My final question that I have would be traffic rules and regs. She indicates in her memo, the very last line, that we can either try to adopt these during the course of this project and try to fit them in, or we should wait and adopt them in the normal process that the town council would normally use to adopt. And I noticed right away at the very start, it talks about removing some former regulations, such as funerals and such as overtaking, and that says they've been removed. So I'll open that up to discussions. Anyone have a feeling, should we try to include those things, or should we look at them more closely and run them through as though they were new changes that the council could approve later in the year? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I think since these are rules of the road, we ought to have another look at it, as well as providing our new police chief with the ability to review it to see if he agrees with them, because he's new. He may have other ideas.
Jeannie?
There was an issue that came up about an enforcement item in the traffic rules and regs, and Mark didn't have a copy of it. And I don't know if you recall, about 3 or 4 years ago, nobody even knew where they were.
Yeah.
Did find a copy. We've all gone through it. So I sent Mark the current rules and regs. I sent him the paginated version of the E-code, and I sent him the list of changes so he can see what changed from one document to another. So he's got that.
He's going to be a lot less friendly to you after that.
So,
I can ask him, you know, if he would please review it and get back to us, or invite him to our next meeting.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I would not like to try to fit this into the approval and the adoption of the code itself at this point.
Okay, I'll do
Anyone
that.
else?
I agree with you, Pat.
Yeah.
The rules and regulations are a separate document that
right.
should be approved separately.
We
Yeah.
might save a few bucks, but
No, I agree with what Ralph and you said.
Well, if I understand correctly, the traffic rules and regulations, they don't have to go through a public hearing or anything because they're not general bylaws.
Right.
They're rules and regs.
And regulations, which is a vote of the council.
Right.
I think they still have to be published. And
Well, what I will say is in the past, they weren't, but that doesn't mean that it's always done correctly.
Yeah.
we'll need to look at the bylaws.
So the last change that was made by council vote was about the commercial vehicles, but it hadn't been changed. So it was like, who owns the document? So I think when we have general code, it's just a thought that every department, whenever there's a change to traffic rules and reg council rules, zoning, it comes through this office, and then I send it to E-code. So that way nothing is missed like that.
Right.
Right.
Just like the zoning had a lot of holes in it, traffic rules and regs, it's like nobody knew where it was. So this will clean that up a lot, I think.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Anybody have anything else? Actually, I shouldn't say that. Anybody else have questions? I went through my questions, and did anyone else have questions that I didn't address, or things that we should be doing or thinking about that we didn't cover? Seeing none, I'll entertain we could try to schedule another meeting, but I think it might be premature.
We gotta wait.
Yeah.
Gotta wait till we get everything back.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Hell no.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it, especially the problems getting in. Don't know what to do.
Don't worry about it, Pat.
Big deal.
We will vote. Actually, we voted appropriately on all the other items, so we need to vote on this one. Bill,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Tom O'Connor,
Yes.
Ralph, and I'm a yes as well.
Yes.
Go back to work, Ralph.
Well, they got another hour left.
Thank you, everyone.
This will be an agenda item for August 10 then?
Yes,
Okay, for the recommendation from our committee to the town council.
the
Okay,
town council, yes.
okay, great, thank you.
Only the recommendation, not the language.
Not the language.
Right.
We'll
Okay,
get to
And I will get that together and get it out to everyone. And that way there you've got it ahead of time and can look at it.
Okay.
so
Once again, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Good to see
Yes,
everybody.
thank you.